stressed students may have lower grades. Stress is a lurking or confounding variable, one that isn't studied or measured but still influences the study's outcome. Chance correlations. With a large data set, chance alone can yield correlations. For example, there is a positive correlation between the number of deaths by drowning and the number of Nicolas Cage movies in a given year. The relationship between these variables is purely mathematical, however, because we have no reason to believe that they should be connected in any meaningful way. In other words, whether Nicolas Cage makes a movie in any given year can't possibly cause more deaths by drowning. And yet there is a correlation between the two. You may have heard the phrase correlation does not equal causation. Cage films and drowning deaths offer the perfect example of this phrase. The existence of chance correlations emphasizes the importance of using existing theories and research to carefully choose which variables to measure. If we consider 100 variables, something is bound to correlate, but it probably won't be useful or revealing. Figure 4. Chance correlation example. 2 multiple choice questions. What is a lurking or confounding variable?
Bermula para celebrar your birthday moon, baby. Vida azul, imamu, pada bila gucu, para tahita nados.
Correlations have many limitations, but their strengths make them useful in research.
Para hago,
For describing and understanding behavior, even with their limitations.
matuju,
That researchers perform studies with
tai
confidence
gui
in.
lanya guacamole.
Finally, correlations help us uncover and narrow down potential causes of
Nai
inherited behaviors.
saku,
If researchers really want to find out what causes a behavior, they need to know what variables to test for in an experiment. Researchers can design experiments with the help of
tada,
experimental
tada,
methods in the following pages. Experimental methods. One of the great mysteries of human psychology is what makes people happy. Is it career success? Close relationships with friends and family? Access to disposable income? Is happiness even something we can measure? Psychological researchers regularly use experiments to assess different hypotheses about
What makes
happiness
people happy? What makes people happy?
and what decreases it. These researchers' goals are generally to test whether changing certain behaviors might lead to an increase in people's reported happiness. Let's look at one such experiment, and then consider how it's different than other research methods we've discussed. After finding evidence of a positive correlation between general happiness and the amount of money that people spend each month on other people, psychologist Elizabeth Young and her colleagues, 2008, decided to test the correlation with an experiment. They recruited 48 undergraduate students and asked them to rate their happiness. Then, Dunn and other researchers gave each student an envelope filled with cash and asked them to spend it by the end of the day. Half of the students were told to spend the money on themselves, to pay a bill, or buy themselves a nice meal or gift. The other half were told to spend the money on someone else, to donate it, or buy a gift for a friend. That evening, the researchers called the students and asked them to rate their happiness once again. The students who spent money on someone else reported higher levels of happiness than those who spent the money on themselves. Now that we've read about how a psychological experiment can measure something as difficult to define as happiness, let's take a look at what else experiments can do. Experiments manipulate variables. Experiments, like correlation
Aloha, Sanma Gogu.
Key idea experiments involve changing or manipulating one variable to test whether it leads to a change in another variable. The variable being manipulated in the experiment is called the independent variable. To isolate the independent variable, experimenters typically assign some participants to an experimental group and others to a control group. In the example above, for instance, the independent variable is whether students spend money on themselves or on someone else. So, participants who were assigned to spend money on themselves were in the control group, and those who spent money on someone else
Hello,
were in the
Hapade, how
control
are
group.
you?
The dependent variable is the one that gets measured to see if the
Oh,
independent
I'm
variable
singing,
is being manipulated.
so I feel
Test the independent and
I
dependent
feel like
variables
singing.
by thinking
That's
about
the
how
bug.
the outcome of the dependent variable depends on what happens to the independent variable. In the above example, students' happiness ratings are the
Yeah, I'm
dependent
okay.
variables.
I'm feeling happy. How's
For
your
example,
emotion?
one can
How's your
expect that increases in the
emotional
independent
feeling today?
variable occur before any changes to the dependent variable. The research
25% off, and it's on your doorstep in 3 to 4 days. It's a spiral-bound full-colour book with 140 plus practical remedies. You'll actually use
Okay, good.
right now.
Me too, good. My
It's
feeling is
20%
good.
off. It's a massive 75% off. Plus
Why
2
your feeling
rewards.
is good?
We ship fast. 3 to 5 days in the US and Australia. 7 to 10 worldwide. Tracked and insured. Grab your copy today at 75% off.
researchers established temporal precedence by asking students to rate their happiness before they received the money and after they
Sorry,
spent
I
it.
have to go. Bye bye.
Spending the money came first, and the increase in happiness came later. 4 multiple choice questions. An experimenter is trying to determine whether a cause and effect relationship exists. In the experiment, which variable represents the suspected cause? Experiments control variables. Think back to one of the limitations of correlational research, lurking or confounding variables. Experiments try to anticipate these confounds and control for them during the study. For example, we might assume that the amount of money a person spends on themselves or others could influence their happiness. Maybe spending $5 on someone else feels good, but does it feel as good as spending $20 on yourself? In anticipation of this very question, Dunn and her colleagues included an additional independent variable in their experiment, the amount of money spent. Half of the students were given $5 to spend, and half were given $20. It turns out that the amount of money didn't make a difference. Still, by controlling for this variable, the researchers were able to conclude that it was the giving, not the amount spent, that mattered. Another way that experiments can control confounds is to use random assignment. A researcher might use a software program to randomly assign a participant to a group, or they could simply flip a coin. Either way, each participant has the same chance of being assigned to a certain group. This means that individual differences are also equally distributed. This is important because these individual differences are potential confounding variables. By distributing these confounds equally, random assignment ensures that the groups are statistically similar. Therefore, Any differences that exist at the end of the experiment can be attributed to the independent variable. Let's consider Dunn's experiment again. A person's happiness is directly tied to multiple variables, including loneliness. What if students who reported feeling lonely were lumped together in the group that had to spend their money on others? That might have given them a big boost of happiness, one far bigger than the boost experienced by students who didn't report feeling any loneliness. By this logic, the study would imply that giving money away really only benefits people who are lonely. Because Dunn's experiment used random assignment, each participant, whether lonely or not, had an equal chance of getting assigned to either group, giving money to others, or spending money on oneself. Random assignment, then, eliminated loneliness as an alternative explanation for the increase in happiness. Multiple choice question. How does random assignment control for lurking variables? On this page, we've seen how experiments manipulate and control variables. On the next page, we'll discuss an important aspect of any study, ethics. Ethical principles should guide research and practice in psychology. But what are these principles, and why are they necessary? Let's take a look. Psychology's ethics. Psychologists work in a variety of settings and roles, such as conducting research, teaching courses, or providing counseling or therapy. In every setting, it is important that they conduct themselves ethically. On this page, we will examine the ethics that psychologists follow in their research and practice. APA Ethics Code. The Code of Ethics for the American Psychological Association, APA, includes both enforceable rules of conduct and a set of principles or values that guide psychologists' professional behavior. Researchers who follow the code are careful in how they conduct their studies, ensuring that participants are not harmed physically or emotionally, and that every researcher involved in the study is given credit. Teachers of psychology demonstrate the principles when they convey respect for students and their right to confidentiality. Psychologists who provide therapy and treatment or who consult with businesses or schools act ethically when they apply psychology to improve people's lives, reduce injustice and inequality, and do so with a sensitivity to individual differences. So as you read research that has gone through peer review, communicate with your instructor, or seek therapy for yourself or a loved one, you should be reasonably confident that these psychologists are aware of and guided by ethics. Let's take a closer look at the principles at the heart of the APA Code. Ethical principles. The ethical principles are ideals that psychologists should try to achieve, such as being fair, honest, and respectful. These principles aren't rules. Rather, they are values that members of APA share and that should guide their research and practice. The APA Code lists 5 principles. Beneficence and non-maleficence. Psychologists should try to do good and avoid harm. Fidelity and responsibility. Psychologists should be respectful, accountable, and cooperative in their professional relationships. Integrity. Psychologists should be honest, accurate, and fair. Justice. Psychologists should work to apply psychology in ways that benefit individuals and society. Respect for people's rights and dignity. Psychologists should respect the right to privacy and confidentiality and be sensitive to diversity and individual needs. All members of APA agree to follow and uphold these ethical principles. The principles highlight who and what psychologists should value in their work. But values are vague and difficult to enforce, so APA also specifies a set of more rigid ethical standards, or rules. Two
Bye-bye.
multiple choice questions. Which ethical principle highlights the importance of respecting the right to privacy and confidentiality in psychology? Ethical standards. The APA Ethics Code also includes specific standards, which are essentially rules that psychologists must follow. The standards are fairly comprehensive and cover a wide range of behaviors, such as maintaining accurate treatment in financial records, being honest when reporting data, and basing any teaching or therapy on evidence-based research. Any violation of the standards can have serious consequences, such as the loss of professional licenses or even legal action. Rather than discuss all the standards in detail, let's focus on the three elements of APA ethical standards that are most important to researchers. Obtain informed consent. Researchers have to first obtain informed consent. They must ensure that anyone participating in research does so willingly, with a full understanding of the potential risks or costs. Participants need to know whether they will be asked to simply fill out a survey or commit to something more serious, such as taking a drug every day for months. Maintain safety, privacy, and respect. Researchers must ensure that their methods do not harm participants. They must respect participants' right to withdraw their consent and stop participating at any time if they feel uncomfortable, distressed, or harmed. They must also protect participants' confidential information. Debrief participants. Researchers should provide participants with information about the results and implications of the research. Since deception is sometimes allowed in research, so that participants don't try to guess what the researcher is studying and alter their behavior, researchers must explain the deception and its rationale in a post-study discussion or debrief.
Hả?
Two multiple choice questions. How do ethical principles
Apa?
differ from ethical standards in the context of psychology? While it is comforting to know that psychologists are guided by ethical principles and held to specific standards, it is important to acknowledge that ethical violations do occur. Psychologists have not always been honest or ethical in their research, and there have been times when psychology was used to perpetuate injustice. Therefore, as you read about research, you should ask if there was any potential for harm and if the conclusions accurately represent the data. And when you apply what you learn from this course to your own life, take care that you do so ethically, in a way that benefits rather than harms others.
Apa? Oi. Apa? Hah? Apa? Okay.
Conclusion. In this chapter, you learned about psychology's history, perspectives, and methods of research, and discovered the importance of emotional intelligence. These concepts provide a foundation for using psychological research to support your ideas and opinions in ethical and emotionally intelligent ways. As you continue through this course, you'll learn more about the key concepts and principles of psychology and how you can apply them to develop self-awareness, social awareness, and empathy. Quick chapter review. Let's take a few minutes to review the key concepts from this week. From its early focus on conscious and unconscious thoughts, psychology has evolved into the science of behavior and mental processes. Because behavior and mental processes are so complex, psychology utilizes the biopsychosocial approach to develop a complete picture that incorporates the 7 psychological perspectives: neuroscience, behavior genetics, evolutionary, psychodynamic, behavioral, cognitive, and social cultural. Psychology emphasizes scientific inquiry rather than intuition. It is guided by ethical principles that protect human well-being. Psychologists use the scientific method to develop theories and then test hypotheses through a variety of research methods. Emotional intelligence is a concept derived from psychological research and theories. It can help you better understand your emotions and keep them in mind as you think carefully about how you respond and behave. The skills of emotional intelligence include self-awareness, self-regulation, ethical judgment, empathy, social awareness, and conflict resolution. Coming up, nature, nurture, and neurodiversity. In this first chapter, you learned the history and 7 major perspectives of psychology. You also learned how psychology might apply to your life through the development of emotional intelligence. In the next chapter, you'll examine the once fierce debate over nature versus nurture to discover how they interact to influence development. You'll explore the anatomy of the brain and see how brain structure and chemistry influence thoughts and behaviors, and you'll discover how neurodiversity promotes respect for all variations in brain functioning. Finally, you'll take a look at the theories that explain similarities and differences in human development and how cultural diversity affects that development.
Ya mungkin dia itu 5